Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss another consequence of Brexit losses to freedom of movement in Conservative vote in North Devon, where it's knackered a tourist village's economy by leaving it with fewer people than jobs available. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So in terms of the consequences of these idiot Tories' moronic desire to remove freedom of movement in Britain, it's really stacking up now. It's prevented our farming sector from hiring people to tend and pick crops, leaving a lot of food rotting in the fields. It has meant job shortages in the haulage industry, as well as warehouses, supermarkets, meaning that we have shortages of food in our shops, more food left to rot. We have job shortages in food production, as I discussed yesterday, meaning that even if we could easily transport food around the country, which we can't, we're not able to produce as much as we were doing because of those Brexit job shortages. And because the hospitality sector can't fill vacancies, restaurants are reducing hours or even closing altogether, even when they can source the food and drink, which is also challenging. But a village on the North Devon coast reckons it has a real Brexit perfect storm going on. In order to calibrate your level of sympathy, I am going to point out it's a Tory voting constituency and it voted by a large margin to leave the EU. Now, as I always say, we can feel sorry for those who voted against both. There'll be people living and working there who voted against both, and they will suffer just as much. But the majority basically voted for what I'm about to describe. So it's another case of the people worst affected are the ones who most strongly supported Brexit. Now, the article in The Guardian reporting this started off as if the village of Linton was having a good old time. A tourist area with a huge influx of holidaymakers this year. Must be very, very welcome after the last year or so with the pandemic. Obviously, hospitality must be breathing a huge sigh of relief that the customers are back and they can open up and be back in business. It's been very busy, absolutely cracking. Well, for those who can manage to run their businesses at any rate, one restaurateur who was interviewed said that their establishment was running at half capacity. Lockdown is gone, it's summer, tourists are flocking into the area. They should be heaving. But like lots of other businesses around Britain, they can't get the staff. They said that even the European workers who have permission to come to the UK and work are being put off by the Brexit paperwork. I would also add that there may be some who don't fancy being treated like a criminal when they enter the country, facing possible detention and having documents confiscated and all the rest of it. But the paperwork is absolutely the thing because our so-called point system does allow certain workers into the country, or if you're on the shortage list, and there are some on the shortage list, and we've heard this from other sectors of the economy as well, where in theory there are certain types of jobs where we can get EU workers, but just the bureaucracy facing them it's just not worth it. It's not worth their while when they can go and work in a different EU country, maybe their own EU country, and have no paperwork. But the point is that the ending of freedom of movement with Brexit, no matter which way it works, is harming mostly us. It was cheered by the Gammons as sticking it up to Johnny Foreigner, but it's hurting us. We lost our freedom of movement in Europe, making travelling for both work and leisure incredibly difficult and at times impossible, making it difficult, if not impossible, to move to other European countries. But the reverse is also hurting us, making it more difficult or impossible for European workers to come here, means that we are suffering severe shortages. And it doesn't work evenly both ways for two reasons. First of all, Europe is much larger than Britain. So Britain, with the loss of freedom of movement, has cut off freedom of movement around virtually an entire continent, whereas that virtually the entire continent has lost some freedom of movement to one little island. Actually, I would say little island. As islands go, it's quite big, but still, it's an island off the continent. So it's not even from that point of view. Another way it's uneven is we have built an economy on the idea of a large workforce that we could not sustain domestically. We've seen this. It's no longer a matter for debate. European workers have left, most are not coming back, and we have crippling staff shortages across a whole range of vital areas of our economy. Those vacancies are not being filled. Where are the domestic workers to fill them? Wages are going up, in the case of lorry drivers by a lot, but the workers aren't appearing. Why not? Because they don't pissing well exist, at least not in this country. This is why a restaurant, without any COVID-related regulations hampering them, and with the largest influx of tourists they've seen in 15 years, is running at half capacity. And they're not even saying they can't source the food and drink they need. They're obviously able to get it, or enough. What their problem is staffing. And this should be a cautionary tale for us. This will be repeated in similar formats around the country. You'd think, oh, it's just one little village. No, it's not. It's all over the country. This is just an example. You know, this is business being lost, productivity not resulting in tax receipts, public services that will therefore have to be cut, which means more jobs being lost from the public sector. You end up with the same moronic cycle of economic shrinkage that we saw from David Cameron's austerity programme. Only the Boris Johnson austerity programme will bite harder because businesses cut off from the single market will find it harder to fight against. There is apparently a 10% vacancy rate in the hospitality sector in general. Not as bad as the 16% in the poultry industry that I was talking about yesterday, but still painting a picture of huge levels of unfilled staffing in another sector of our economy. And think about what all that lost business is doing to us. And this is a sector that has already been hit for six by the pandemic. That's the same throughout Europe. Our continental refusal to adopt the same zero COVID approach of Pacific-based cousins means that we have, and when I say we, I mean Europe this time, have an endless cycle of restrictions which naturally enough hits hospitality first and hardest. But whereas these establishments have only the pandemic to get through, and many are in other countries where government support has been better, in Britain they have Brexit to deal with as well. Outside of Britain, and that includes the emerald part of the UK, those who can weather the COVID storm will come out on the other side. In Britain, these Brexit-related staffing issues are permanent, or at least as permanent as this government. You know, they aren't going away until we get a progressive government who wants to harmonise with not only our largest market, but a vital source of workers. But back to Linton, North Devon. And the article set out why their problems are really going to be for the long term. As a small but popular tourist area, there are more jobs vacancies in your peak holiday season than there are actual working age people living there. This transcends arguments about wages or just pay more. You know, that is sometimes an argument. There are some businesses where it's been put to them, look, you know, you've lost your sources of cheap labour, you're going to have to put your wages up, aren't you? That's not working here because there's no one to take the money. There are not physically enough people in the area to carry out these jobs. And to highlight how bad the situation is, a hotel had started to bus people in from Liverpool to work there. They're having to get staff from 300 miles away, which speaks of what I've said multiple times in the past. You can't just think, oh, we've got jobs vacancies. Oh, we've got unemployed people. Just put the two together. The unemployed are not always where the vacancies are, even if you remove skills from the equation. In hospitality, you have the chance to accommodate workers. Now, large hotels have rooms set aside for migrant staff. So this recruitment strategy of going hundreds of miles away, albeit at extra cost, is possible for some. Even then, you can struggle because those people need to leave their families for the season. But it's possible. Not quite so easy for smaller businesses or businesses that don't have on-site accommodation. You don't see too many dormitories in chicken factories, for example. So what happens to businesses who don't have enough potential workers in their catchment areas, don't have the capacity to simply bus people in from where there is enough unemployment, hundreds of miles away? Because that's the issue facing the country right now. It's an issue that the government have announced no plan for. How do you manage your business when you not only have a high number of vacancies, but you also know there are simply not enough workers even potentially available within a credible travelling range? That even increasing wages and improving working conditions, which actually is one unintended benefit of this mess for those who are able to do those jobs, but it doesn't actually help production. And for every sector where this is the case, and it's a lot of them, it actually increases our reliance on the EU, which is somewhat ironic given that Brexit has caused this. Because when we can't produce as much food, it increases reliance on EU imports of food. When we can't manage as many restaurant goers or holiday makers, it increases pressure on people to holiday abroad, spending their money in the EU economy. And the same will be true of every sector of our economy that is shrinking due to Brexit. If it can't actually provide what we need, we'll get it elsewhere. Where we're going to get it? The EU. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.